focused. Make sure you go around in the chamber and you safely are.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming to watch the show. Today I'm going to be talking to you about The Walking Dead, and that's a name that a lot of people can recognize even if they're not fans of the show or the comics. But a few years ago, the show was one of the biggest ones on TV, even if it's not that big now. Almost everybody I knew was at some point talking about it and really avidly watching it. I had never heard of The Walking Dead before the show came out, and it was probably a few seasons in before I even discovered that it was based on a comic series. But when I found that out, I was interested in them, but looking at the prices for the issues or the volumes or the gigantic compendiums steered me away from reading them just because of the price. They looked cool, but I wasn't willing to put down like 20 to 50 bucks on a comic that I thought was just the basis for a TV show and therefore wouldn't really offer me anything new. But I recently got a comic book subscription, and it's only just like $5 or $6 a month. So I've been reading a lot more comics since then, and The Walking Dead is one of them that's included with that. And so I've been able to dive into a lot of things that I had missed, including The Walking Dead. So this seemed like the perfect time to jump in to see what really sparked this kind of cultural phenomenon that really took over a lot of people's interest for a few years. So, although I might be 16 years behind the curve on this since these came out originally in 2003, it's never too late to try something new, and I'd say a lot of you guys are in the same boat as me, and you may not have ever checked these out, so I wanted to make this video for people like you. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what I liked about this comic, how it compares to the TV show, and whether or not I think it's something you should check out even if you have seen the show. Since most people that are familiar with The Walking Dead have probably only seen the show, I feel like it's necessary to compare the two, at least at this point. And I'm told that the show and the comic divert into pretty different stories pretty quickly, so as I read the series, I'll likely talk about the show less if I make future videos on this subject. But this whole video is going to have a lot of spoilers for both the show's first and second season, and it's going to completely spoil the first volume of the comic series. So, I just finished the first volume, which is Days Gone By, and that contains the first 6 issues of the series. And while it hits a lot of the same beats of the show and didn't really tell me anything I didn't already know, it was still an awesome experience to really read that and kind of see what I've been missing. So it's been years since I watched the show's first season, so revisiting this time in the character's journey was very enjoyable. I assume everybody knows the story, but to summarize it quickly, I'll just read the description that I see on the comics. It says, Rick Grimes is not prepared for this. A couple months ago, he was a small-town cop who had never fired a shot and only ever saw one dead body. Separated from his family, he must now sort through the death and confusion to try and find his wife and son. So that pretty much tells you that all you're going to need to know going into this story. I'm probably not going to go too in-depth with summarizing the story in this video, but if you'd like something like that, just let me know and I'll put together a video about it. One thing that really struck out to me about this comic was just how isolated and alone it makes you feel, especially in the beginning. There are numerous panels showing Rick in a wide-angle view on a road or in a neighborhood or coming up on the city of Atlanta, and he's the only thing there, living or dead. I think doing this is a fantastic way to show just how bad things have gotten since the coma that a work-related injury left him in. The way Rick reacts to all the carnage and destruction is how I imagine most of us would: fear, revulsion, and confusion. He doesn't go out and immediately start killing the walkers, and when he sees them at first, he thinks they might actually be alive, and he even shows pity to a few of them, especially the one that we see early on. The way that he goes back to put it out of its misery is pretty similar to the show, and I'm really glad that they kept this particular scene in because it's a great moment for Rick as a character, and it just really shows like how he's grown even in that short amount of time. Another great moment is when Rick meets Morgan Jones and his son Dwayne, and they help each other out through this new world that they're both trying to come to terms with. I don't know if Morgan turns up again in the comics like he does in the show, but not having that knowledge makes this even more impactful, just showing that even in the worst of times, there's still someone good in this world that Rick can depend on for our help. Those of us that have watched the show or know the story know that people aren't always that great in this world. In fact, most people that they come into contact with are just going to try and take advantage or even kill people that they meet. So showing that this person is actually good and that someone that can depend on is a really nice kind of change of pace to the way things have been going in this comic so far, just basically that there's no hope so far. This also shows how much of a good person Rick is, because even after all that he's been through and the fact that he's searching for his wife and son right now and he's got a lot going on, he still is able to put that aside for a moment to be able to help somebody and show compassion and understanding to a complete stranger. So another thing that I particularly like about the comics in general is just the choice to make it entirely black and white. I'm not sure if this was maybe just like a choice that they made in order to get away with more blood and gore, but somehow having it in black and white just makes it feel a little bit more serious. There are definitely lighthearted moments throughout, but overall this is a pretty mature and bleak story, so I think that gets really driven home even more by the color scheme. So back to the story. After getting to the city of Atlanta, Rick meets up with Glenn and the rest of a small group of survivors outside the city, and he discovers that his wife Lori and son Carl are among them. So this is one of the few times during the comic that we see Rick experience any sort of relief and respite from the deteriorating circumstances around him. Little moments like this seem even more special due to their scarcity, and it's a pretty great scene getting to see Rick embrace his family and reunite with his old partner Shane. Shane is and always has been one of my favorite characters from this series, not because I think he's a good person or even a likable one, but because he's basically the opposite of Rick. Rick is everything that we would want to be in this horrible situation. He's kind, generous, trusting, and strong. And I think Shane is a lot closer to what I think most people would actually turn into if the world ended the way it does in this show and series. He keeps it together for a little while, but he just loses it after he starts to realize that they're completely alone and rescue is most likely never coming. This is made even worse for him by his desire for Lori and thinking that Rick's return has ruined his chance with her. I think one thing that the show does do a little bit better than the comic is show the development of Shane a little bit more. In the comic, the arc of his character is pretty much just that he wants to steal Lori from Rick and they disagree on how the group should operate. So that story is pretty much the same in the show, but we're given a lot more time to see things begin to fall apart and Shane slowly lose it. I think my only complaint for this comic is that Shane's shift into a villain from basically a hero and kind of Rick's ally is that it would have been a little bit better if things had taken their time heating up. So the arc is still a really good one, especially with the emotionally charged finale with Shane about to shoot Rick and instead being shot by Carl. Even though I knew this was coming, I still thought that this was a great series of panels, and this is another huge change for Rick. Seeing his friend change from somebody that he can count on and trust to somebody that's turning on him and trying to steal his wife and murder him is something that really affects him, and I feel like it changes Rick's perception of people forever, and although he's still trusting to a fault at times, this is definitely something that stays with him. So overall, I would definitely recommend this to anyone that's a fan of The Walking Dead, whether you just like the show or the Telltale games maybe. I think this is a great comic to read. If you're a fan, you've likely at least seen these before, and if you're like me, you might have held off because of the price or maybe because you didn't think you would get anything new from them after watching the show. But I promise there's a lot here to enjoy. If you'd like to hear more from me about The Walking Dead, let me know, because I'm currently reading the second volume and I'd be happy to talk with you guys about it. Check me out over on Twitch at The Ben Jammy if you want to hang out and play some games with me, and follow me over on Instagram at The Ben Jammy Broadcast for some cool pics of me and my interests and like videos in the making and that sort of thing. So, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
They may not seem like much one at a time, but in a group all hungry, man, you watch your ass.